medicine coming on.
Okay, it has been a quick minute since I've done one of these. For you, it's literally been a quick minute because you probably, hopefully, just watched one of my other reviews. But yes, life has changed. So many things are going on, but this is still really important to me, and especially when I have strong feelings about a book, I want everybody to know. Today's book is The Roanoke Girls by Amy Engles. Now, I don't know how many of you have read this, but if you have seen my review about Flowers in the Attic, then you're kind of gonna know how this review is gonna go. First, let me tell you the premise of the Roanoke Girls, alright? The main character, Lane, is coming home because her cousin Allega has gone missing. And not only is her cousin missing, but there's something mysterious about the Roanoke Girls. They either disappear or die. Great premise, right? Like, you have two questions right off the bat. Where's Allegra? And what keeps happening to the Roanoke Girls, right? Let me pause for a minute and tell you, Allegra and Lane are Roanoke girls. So it's not just some mysterious family, it is their family. Something crazy keeps happening to all the females of the Roanoke family, and by accompanying Lane on this search for Allegra, we also get to see what's going on in this family and kind of figure out why they have so many problems. Now, total spoiler alert, okay? The thing is, if you read the Roanoke Girls, the spoiler happens right away. Essentially, the secret behind the Roanoke Girls, because the book is told in past and present. And so, it starts in the present. Does it start in the present? Does it start in the past? In either case, like 3 chapters in, when Lane has returned home, we learn the big secret is that her grandfather sleeps with every female member of his family. Can I get a yuck? Like, where's my vomit bowl? Because if I thought I had problems with Flowers in the Attic, it's nothing compared to the Roanoke Girls. Because at least Flowers in the Attic, while I have an issue with incest, Flowers in the Attic, I can understand. I can see how those two characters were completely isolated. And as they were growing and going through adolescence, the only person they had to turn to was each other. And not only that, like going through this period of time where you're exploring, you're learning, you're figuring yourself out, but like that was their support system. So I could see how they would turn to each other. The Roanoke Girls, I see how Engles tried to make that the reason that Yates, the grandfather, just showered, I want to say showered the women, but I really don't know. Like, I don't get enough background. Like, there's very little that we actually get to see and experience with Yates. But in any case, this is what is said in the book. That he showers the women with attention and gives them love that they're not getting anywhere else. And the setting where the Roanoke family lives is in a very remote Kansas town, and their actual house is set way away from the itty bitty little town, okay? So, like, I see how Engles is trying to set it up. Like, this is really all they have. They are in their own sort of isolation, but for me, it failed. Because we really get very little of Yates / the grandfather, I just couldn't buy it. The deal is, Lane, her mother commits suicide when she's 16. Her social worker is like, look, your grandparents who you've never met, you barely even know of, they want you. So she moves from New York to Kansas for about a summer. And so those are the past points of view. And in the present, so after that summer, when she learned that her grandfather was sleeping with her cousin Allegra, she got out of Dodge. She was like, see ya! And so it's 10, 11-ish years later, she gets the call that Allegra is missing, and so she comes back. Because the chapters go back and forth, we honestly don't see a lot of Yates. And then we have additional chapters with other women's points of view. Let me see if I can remember all the names. So we have Yates, and then his oldest sister, Jane. That's the only sister I can remember. We have Yates, and then there's Jane. And then he has another sister named Sophia, and then he has a third sister named Emmeline. Jane and Yates, I mean, we are totally spoiling things here. Like, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Jane and Yates have a daughter named Penelope, right? Jane, we learn from her point of view, completely infatuated with him. They are in love, blah-de-blah. She gets pregnant, and then she decides to leave. We really don't get much about why. We don't ever figure out where she went, what happened to her, but she leaves the baby in the house. Actually, part of the reason she left was because Yates had begun to show affection towards Sophia. So Jane was like, I don't like to share, I'm leaving, and maybe he'll miss me and he'll realize what he lost. Yates has an affair with Sophia, and along the line, Yates also marries Lillian, okay? I mean, this is honestly ridiculous, okay? Sophia is thereby threatened by Lillian in the way that Jane was threatened by Sophia. And she's like, I'm gonna kill myself, essentially for the same reasons that Jane left. Because maybe he will realize what he's lost. So Jane gets out of town, Sophia kills herself. Oh no, I'm wrong. Emmeline is not his third sister. He had those two sisters. Emmeline is his third daughter. So he had a daughter with Jane named Penelope, who he then starts sleeping with. And so then he has 3 daughters with Lillian: Eleanor, Camilla, and Emmeline. We learn eventually that Lillian, his wife, killed Emmeline because she knew he was sleeping with every woman in his family. So she had, I'm not sure if it's just part of her nature or if it's because she saw what was going on with his husband and her daughters, that she was like, because of what she'd seen with her husband and his sisters, she was like, I just can't have anything to do with my kids. So she kills Emmeline because that is the one daughter that she feels a scrap of feelings for. So yes, Emmeline dies in infancy. Eventually, Yates sleeps with Eleanor. As I said, he's slept with Penelope, or maybe he didn't quite sleep with her. Her perspective is a little wishy-washy for me. She has an encounter with him of some sort. My thought was that, yes, they had slept together, but I was reading some other reviews and recaps, and they were saying it was just a kiss. They're probably right. I'm probably wrong, because I was so disgusted. Guys, I probably should not have finished this book, but I wanted to see what happened to Allegra. Honestly, I knew what happened to Allegra because I read a spoiler review, but I wanted to see how we were going to get there. I wanted to see how Engel was going to depict this aspect of the novel, but I should not have continued because this is a DNF. I have not found a single review that has really raved about this book. Some of them have been lukewarm at best. I guess I'm a glutton for punishment. Anyways, the whole thing with Penelope is she, after their encounter, she's like, he loves me and I'm ready. And she's 14, okay? So it's not just incest, but it's rape, okay? So she's sneaking off to meet Yates, and her nightgown is too long and she trips and goes down the stairs and dies. I think it would have been cooler if Lillian had murdered her, but that's just me, okay? Yates sleeps with Eleanor, and then they have a farmhand named Charlie, who I guess also figured out what was going on in the house. And so then Yates sends Eleanor to go sleep with Charlie so that he is now also tied up in the plot and he can't say anything about what's going on at Roanoke without himself getting in trouble. Allegra may or may not be Yates' daughter as well as his granddaughter. We find out that Lane is his daughter because he also slept with Camille. And she ran to get away from him and essentially to get her kid away from him. And so this is not something we learn until very late in the novel. Lane had asked her mother about her father. Her mother would not talk about her father or about Lane's father, except to say that Lane looks just like him. Camille, obviously, she commits suicide, and she has just been emotionally disturbed for most of Lane's life. She was, according to Lane, not a good mother, not present. They had no real relationship. And so that was something that she was hoping to get by being at Roanoke, kind of get more sense of her mother. She never got it because the story was not about family. The story was about Yates sleeping with every single female member of his family, which, where's my vomit bucket? Like, has somebody brought it to me yet? While Lane, during this summer, where she has just come to Roanoke after her mother commits suicide, she meets a boy named Cooper through Allegra, who is dating a boy named Tommy. Here now we get Lane's sexual escapade. So this book, not necessarily just about incest, it's just about sex. Thankfully, there was nothing explicit, but that was the driving force behind this book. And I'm like, if you want your entire book to be about sex, make it NA. Alright? Put it out as a self-published book and give us all the explicit scenes. Because otherwise, like, this book just had no substance. I mean, even with the sex, like, there was no substance to this book. Let's get back to Lane. Lane meets Cooper, they eventually start sleeping together, and she is under the assumption that Allegra has been sleeping with Tommy. No, Allegra has been sleeping with her grandfather, which is why she got so upset with Lane for sleeping with Cooper, because she was like, it needs to be special. You need to be special to him, to be the only one, you need to be in love. And this whole time, Lane is thinking, Allegra is talking about Tommy. No, she's talking about a grandfather. And look, they're 16 years old. How long has she been sleeping with her grandfather? I mean, if Penelope was going to sleep with him at 14, is that when it started with Allegra? At the end of the book, we finally get the big revelation scene where Lane walks in on Allegra and their grandfather, and that's when she's like, peace out. But you know what's really disturbing? Is that her initial reaction was, why wasn't it me? Let me get that barf bucket again. Okay, so as she is leaving, her grandfather catches up to her, and again, she's like, you're gross, this is sick and nasty, like, I can't believe you've been sleeping with Allegra, but why couldn't it have been me? And he's picking up on this, and then he kisses her, and thankfully she had enough sense to pull away and get out of Dodge, which I guess all of this, or maybe the fact she never finished high school, maybe there's a perfect storm of things that send her into, like, basically a poverty-level life. She makes all kinds of bad decisions. She's constantly sabotaging any kind of happiness she could have. And, you know, that doesn't sit well with me either. Like, this entire town, all of the characters, in my opinion, are extremely stereotypical. There's only one character that really sort of stands out to me, and that is the woman that Tommy eventually marries, and her name is Sarah. So the deal is, I don't understand Allegra. Like, I kind of like her, but I feel like she is stereotypical in that we have to have that one character who runs free and does what she wants and strings along the boys. And so I don't really know Allegra's motivations for anything. Like, we never get anything about her sleeping with her grandfather. No explanation whatsoever, except for those little tidbits of, like, you shouldn't sleep with Cooper because blah, blah, blah. Tommy eventually gets tired of waiting for Allegra, and he moves on and he marries this girl named Sarah. This we learn from Allegra, because all the women he slept with we get a POV from. She, not devastated, but it's kind of like, he's mine, he will always be mine, and I can't believe that he would actually go and marry someone else, and like, why would he marry her of all people? To prove to him that he belongs to her, she sleeps with him. The one and only time they ever sleep together, and she winds up pregnant. It is unclear if the baby is Tommy's or if it is her grandfather's, which means, people, if you're keeping up, all right? Allegra is his granddaughter, may or may not be his daughter, so this baby may or may not be his daughter and his great-great-granddaughter. Like, where's the enjoyment in that? That's nasty, right? This is why Lillian, hello, spoiler like number 502, Lillian kills Allegra because she is done taking care of other people's babies. Not because she's threatened by Allegra, not because she's tired of other women, family members, sleeping with her husband, but because if Allegra has a baby, she does not want to take care of it, which I can't blame her, especially if it's her husband's kid. And on top of that, she realizes even if that baby is not Yates's baby, he will still sleep with it. Like, even if it is not a Roanoke girl, he will still, and let's do the math here, people. I think he's in his mid-ish 60s in the past. So that means he's in his mid-ish 70s in the present. So when that kid, if it's a girl, when that kid is old enough to be sexually active, that's another 14 years. So he could be in his 90s. Apparently they age well, so maybe it wouldn't be a problem, but ew? Ew. So that's why Allegra dies, because she's pregnant and Lillian's like, I'm done, right? I'm just over it. Let's get back to the characters. As I mentioned, the town in which they live is very small. It is a dead-end town. And on one hand, I like the town. I like the setting because it feels like a character. It feels like a place anybody would want to escape, but nobody seems to be able to leave. But on the other hand, how many books have we read with that situation? With all these people unhappy with their lives. All of these people who are going nowhere. All of these people who, I don't want to be rude, because hick doesn't necessarily need to be derogatory, but it's just people who have no ambition, and therefore they're just kind of like, not a low life, but let's just say it's somebody I would want to date. I would not want to date a man from this town. I wouldn't want to be friends with a woman from this town because she is all about going to the honky tonk, looking like a hooker, and trying to go home with a man and getting drunk. And where's the appeal, right? I guess I'm just someone who prefers characters who want something out of life, who are going for something, who are trying, even if they're stuck in a town, they're going somewhere. Like, they want to get out. They're not just satisfied to live a lackluster life. So yeah, all the characters, they have nothing going for them, and they've, have how many kids without any husbands, and every child has a different father, which, you know what, it may or may not be a bad thing to you, but to me, I'm like, what does that say about the woman who has done this and is like, okay, I don't really care? I mean, like, how is she providing for her kids by having so many children without any kind of way to provide for them? She's not setting anybody up for success. And then Lane herself, as I said, she likes to sabotage herself. So she marries a man who could potentially provide a really good life for her, but I guess she's too scared to have that, so she sleeps with her next door neighbor, like, intentionally trying to get caught. I don't know. And then, she's in Roanoke longer than she thinks, so she calls up her ex and she's like, can you pay my rent? I just thought that storyline, like, we didn't need that. Like, I probably would have asked, how are you paying your rent? But, like, I didn't really see how bringing her ex into things really made a difference, like, really advanced the plot. Like, I was satisfied with, I sabotaged my marriage. Like, that's the kind of person I am. But let's get into Lane a little bit more. So she's described as extremely attractive. And as far as the narration goes, she comes across as intelligent. If she is the daughter / granddaughter of Yates, how is she so normal? I'm serious here, guys. Like, biologically, she should have something wrong with her, as should Allegra. Like, if they are both products or double products of a familial ancestor, like, how are they so normal? And that, I mean, let's get storytelling aside. That is a fact that bothers me. Like, if you're gonna write a story like this, you need to make it as factual as possible. And there's really not a lot of facts you gotta get straight, okay? Like, you can create whatever world you want, but you have to know, scientifically, you can't have a person with that close of genes coming out as normal and as non-physically deformed as Lane is. So I had an issue with that. And, I had an issue because I felt she was a stereotype. I loved the idea of her getting out. I'm not convinced by her reasoning for leaving because, in my opinion, she didn't really want to leave. She wanted Yates's attention. She wanted to be the next woman in his bed. So while I like that she left because it obviously showed strength and courage, I don't know why she left. Because I felt like her revulsion was overpowered by her sense of, I guess, injustice. And he explains to her, I just was waiting for the right time. I wanted to wait until you were ready. Which, because we really got very little of him, I couldn't see how he was preparing her, how he was getting her adjusted to life in their house and attached to him. Because if he was able to get all these women to sleep with him, it was because of his charm, his charisma, the way he showered them with love. Okay, so he was a lot more amiable than Lillian. He seemed to care more, to be a little bit more invested. But outside of a couple dinners, and, she would work with him in the barn, like, taking care of the animals, and he taught her to drive. That didn't scream extreme affection, and showing more love than any normal person. My dad does that. Am I in love with my father? No. I just was disappointed by the fact that she got out to essentially make her life better, to escape a bad situation. But she does not improve herself. Again, how many characters do we have like that? Especially in a book full of characters just like her. Sarah, I think I forgot to go into her. Sarah, Tommy's wife, right? So she's set up, so I like this, okay? So initially, we're like, oh, Sarah, you really are the consolation prize. Like, he married you because Allegra would not marry him. She's portrayed as a really dowdy, mousy, soft-spoken woman who, you know, her whole life revolves around having a family, pleasing her husband, which, I mean, I know we're all about women's empowerment, but is that really a bad thing? To want to please your husband and to keep a good house? We need to make our beds and sweep the floor. Otherwise, we're going to live in a pigsty. So is there really anything wrong, especially if that is her personality? How many homemakers do we have? She's set up as somebody that we're not going to like, that we're going to make fun of. But then we learn that she knew about Allegra and Tommy's affair, or, you know, tryst, their one-night stand. And she bucked up and approached Allegra. So now I'm like, all right, Sarah. Still, Lane's looking at her like, oh, you poor woman. You're more concerned with the meatloaf in the oven or whatever's cooking in the crock pot. Do you not understand? And she's still making fun of her clothes and this and that. And I'm like, you know what? I respect Sarah more than anyone else because she saw something she wanted and she fought to keep it. Who else has done that in this book? Lane, obviously, since she married someone else, had left Cooper in the dust, okay? So he is understandably pissed at her, even all these years later. And what does she do after a bad day? She gets drunk at a bar, tries to make him jealous, and then they have sex in his truck. How is she any better than anyone else? Like, what has she done in her life to improve herself? So if you can't tell, I don't really care for Lane. I liked her in the beginning, especially in those introductory past chapters, because I could really feel for her. But honestly, right after she comes home to Roanoke, or maybe, let's see, because she comes home to Roanoke, we end that scene or that chapter with learning that in some shape, form, or fashion, Yates has been sleeping with Allegra, and then we switch back to the past, and then we come back to the future, or the present again. So when we come back to the present, that's basically when she lost me. I just didn't care anymore. And as I said, I had been looking forward to Allegra's mystery, and that one really, it was the only redeeming part of this novel, but even then, it didn't feel like this story was about finding Allegra. This story was about Lane ruining her past, just regretting things that she had done or left behind. The book ends with Lillian going to prison and Yates essentially having no punishment whatsoever because there was nobody left to cry rape against him or to prove that he'd done anything wrong. He says to Lane, because she brings this up to him, she's like, you have no Roanoke girls left. And he's like, well, I have you. And, you know, it occurs to her, like, hey, I could stay. And she doesn't. I didn't actually, I did at some point, like, essentially right after we found Allegra, I was like, I'm done. We've hit the mile marker I've been waiting for. I'm done. But from what I've read, I think she maybe goes off with Cooper, like, it's implied that they resume their relationship. I don't really know. But I still get the sense that she wanted to stay. At another point in the novel, it was pointed out, like, why are you still here? So why isn't she leaving? Like, they're not finding Allegra. And I feel like it's half-hearted attempts to find Allegra. There's, like, one search scene. what's happening in the rest of the novel? Like, what is she doing to find her cousin? Allegra had this weird habit of scratching words into everything, and so I guess, yeah, she did that, where she was like, maybe if I find the right word, I'll find a secret message from Allegra. But really, there was no forward momentum in finding Allegra. The whole book was really about Lane putzing around in her one-horse town while we got perspectives from other women who had slept with Yates and then past events from Lane's life. It was dull, honestly, guys. Like, outside of the nasty incest, it just wasn't, I can't say it wasn't a well-written book, but it was not an exciting book. And maybe that's another reason why Lane really had no ambition in life, was because ambition means you have to have personality, and there's got to be interest, and there's nothing in this book. That's it. I wish that I could have learned, because Eleanor had left when Allegra was a baby. We never learn what happens to her. We never learn what happens to Jane. I thought it would have been really cool if we had gotten some resolution with them. I thought it would have been more interesting if we had gotten more about Yates. Get most from Lillian and Jane, I guess you could say, because they were really in love with him. They were kind of, Jane was his first, and you really got the sense that it was reciprocal. The others, I don't know, maybe he was trying to fill a void of Jane, maybe he was just nasty, I don't know. And then we get Lillian, who is just enamored with him when she meets him. Parents say don't do it, she does it anyways, and she's like, my parents were right. It would have been cool if she'd killed Penelope. She killed Emmeline, she killed Allegra, she killed Penelope. Like, what if she'd just been killing off all the women in Yates' life? That would have been really interesting, you know? Because I could understand that, even though some of these women came before Lillian. But, like, where's the dynamic in this? There's none. You know, nobody really wants to do anything. It made me feel tired. Have you ever read a book and you just felt tired? Like, the town was tired, the characters were tired, and I was tired. I honestly wanted more motivation behind Yates. That's basically it. Like, if I'd gotten to see him, gotten more sense of him, gotten to see how he convinced all these women that it was okay, because, you know, at least with Flowers in the Attic, lines were muddied in that, and it obviously the children were raised religious, so they knew it shouldn't be done, but things got muddied. In the Roanoke girls, they just should have known better. What was it that got them to convince themselves that it was okay? I maybe it's just me. Maybe because of my beliefs and my upbringing, I just don't see how people will be okay with this. Maybe you can explain it to me. But guys, this book was terrible. Like, it was awful on so many levels, and I'm glad that I actually got to talk about it, because, as I said, I've been super busy, and I was afraid that I was going to forget a lot of my feelings, and I was going to forget a lot of the plot, and it just came right back to me. So, there we go. That's the Roanoke girls. Yeah. Enough said. I'll see you later. Tootsies!